I'm waiting. We'll begin in 2 minutes. Hi, thanks for joining me. I'll just wait for a few more persons to join in. We'll begin at 7 exactly, 7 your time, 6 a.m. where I am. So just a couple more minutes. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Can you hear me clearly? Can you leave a comment if you can hear me clearly? I'm in a different location, so I need to be really sure that you can hear me well. Can you hear me? Please leave a comment, nod to say yes or something. Just type yes if you can hear me clearly, please. Awesome. Hello, Veg. How are you? Okay, I need a couple more persons to confirm that you can hear me. All you need to do is type yes. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. I'm expecting a full class, but because I'm preparing to go to church where I am, I think we should just begin. How are you? How is Ninja? As you're aware, I'm away attending the IANCR conference in New Zealand, but I understand that your exams are coming up soon. And so this class is designed to just remind us some of the things that we learned already. And thankfully, they're also available on YouTube. So you can come back here and look at what we've already done. But today, I just want to steer you in the direction of what you need to know as you go ahead, as you prepare for your exam. So this is sort of an exam prep for the postgraduate class, those who are taking the course, documentation and referencing. It is really, really important that we all pay attention here. And it's going to be sort of maybe, I'll just point to you clearly some of the things that you're supposed to expect or that you expect for this exam. A little bit of a reminder, and then I'll just share some sample questions that you can practice, look through even as you prepare. I am aware, and you are aware, that this part of the course is a tiny portion of the entire research course. So I'll be sending my questions over to the lead lecturers, and then they will administer it. I think I'm supposed to provide 2 or 3 questions, and you have the option of answering 1 or 2. But of course, the instructions will be really clear, so no confusions there. If you have any questions regarding that, you can pop it in the comment section and I'll respond. But just before we go ahead, how is Nigeria? I really want to know what's happening in River State. Are we still fighting over there? Are we still quarreling who's going to be governor or not? Can someone just leave a message? And this is just for fun, yeah? I would like to just know how is home, how is everyone, how are you doing, how is work, everything okay? One line, let me just know everything is okay over there. Someone can just leave me a comment and say Niger is okay. This class is going to be really interactive, so please, I need you to engage and engage fast. How is Niger? How is Nigeria, my beloved country? Anybody? I'm waiting for the comments. Even as it comes through. Okay, Niger is okay. Thank you, Toyin, for letting me know. Nenga Odinga says Niger is okay. I'm happy to hear that. Okay. Abasiama is here. The cost ref says everything is okay. Good. Who is this? Wave Page Fashion and Design Week. Good evening, Joy. You look good. Oh, thank you. But that's not the question I asked, though. Looking good, doctor. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's jump into it. Yeah. Let's jump into it. Okay, let me pull up the first slide. Remember, in our earlier classes, one of the most important things I've tried to deliver is to enable us understand, make us understand why referencing and citation matters, why documentation matters. I believe strongly that if we have a good rationale for actions that we've been asked to take, it is easier for us to just implement them. If we know the why, it's not easy, it's no longer difficult to put some practice into action, right? To practice certain things. If we know the reason why we are asked to do something, it will be difficult for us to do them. And so this is just to remind us. In class, we talked about this. And of course, when we had our tutorials here, I also mentioned them. But there are different reasons for which we are asked to reference in academic writing. And it's really, really important that we remember this, even as you go for your exam. Because I do understand that to properly reference, you need a guide by your side. So the questions you'll be expecting won't necessarily be, oh, how do you cite this and how do you cite that? What I want to see instead is whether you understand the reason why, right? So let's remember that. I'd also like to say this. Isaac Newton is noted for this particular quote. He said, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." I want you to remember this quote and think about it. If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Now, Newton wasn't literally standing on the shoulders of any giants, because how many giants are there now? I haven't seen one. The closest I've seen will be John, but I mean, what does that mean, therefore? What was he trying to say? He's noted for so many inventions and amazing things in our world that we still benefit today. What he was saying was that if there's anything he's accomplished, he didn't do it on his own. He had to build on what some other persons probably started. And that's how it is in academic writing, that our ideas, before we get to the point of an original idea, we may have read a couple of books, articles, watched some movies, engage people in conversations, listen to classes and tutorials before we got to that point of emerging with an original idea. And so it's important that we admit that we did look at social material, we did refer to this person, and then we borrowed this other idea from here, and then we read this book and this person said this to show up our argument. It's important that we do this and that we acknowledge it. And so the first reason I've written here is acknowledgement of intellectual debt. The ideas we have and that we inject into our work, that we include in our writings, when they are not ours, it's important that we acknowledge where we got them from. It's important that we do this. What does this do for us? It lends to credibility of our arguments. It enhances understanding. It makes whatever evidence we present more solid and verifiable. I mean, it's even a sign of respect to others that when you borrow their ideas, you acknowledge it by citing them and by drawing up a comprehensive referencing list that includes all the citations you've included in your work. Failure to do this is wrong in the world of academia. And when you think about it, really, all around the world, things are changing. And even the standards that people expect or the rules in academic writing also apply elsewhere. Whether you're doing a journalistic piece, when you work with others, it's important that you acknowledge that. If you're going to use people's images, it's important that you tell people that this image is not mine. And we know the whole thing about copyright laws and what's happening on social media and the evolutions there. I mean, think about what Facebook is doing with monetization in Nigeria now. It's going to be a tough competition. And they're going to hold strictly and ensure that people use their own content and that they don't profit off other people's content. And that if you use other people's content, that you acknowledge that you do that. So the conversations we're having here are not just limited to the academic world. So it's important that you imbibe them. The second reason I've written here is establishing credibility and authority. If you're going to apply any theory in your work, for instance, in building your theoretical framework, these are established theories in communication and media studies. It's be odd, therefore, that you're talking about a theory and you don't mention the person who came about that idea, that principle. I'll give you a classic example. If you're doing a work that pertains to framing, for instance, once you mention Entman, everybody buys the idea because he's one of the major figures when it comes to framing. Other people have written stuff around framing, they have defined framing, but his own definition stands out in a very peculiar and unique way. Citing Entman in your work or using Entman's ideas to support the position of your work lends to the credibility because it's an authority. You can imagine defining framing and not saying and using Entman's framing definition without admitting in your work, without including in your work that this definition was by framing. People will wonder, people in the academic world wonder, who is this person? Stealing people's ideas are things that are like not acceptable at all, and the punishment is severe. And so it takes us to the next point about avoiding plagiarism, because when you take people's idea and you don't give them credit for it, you have plagiarized, and the punishment is severe. It could lead to the loss. I mean, people have lost their careers, people have lost their jobs, people have lost their families just because of one thing that they think is maybe a mistake or it just keeps their mind. People's works have been rejected just because they did not do proper citing and referencing. And so, for instance, I'm in New Zealand now attending the IENCR, which is, I mean, one of the biggest conferences. I think they're just about to, the ICA and the IEMCR. These are the biggest two in the world of communication media studies globally. For one's paper to be accepted here, for you to be invited to come present your paper, it means that you've written a solid piece of academic writing and that you have properly referenced your sources. Failure to do that will mean that they don't accept you. And that's why conferences like this, when you get in, it's really a big deal. And I'm really excited. But how does one come to this point where you're able to reference and cite in ways that are credible and acceptable everywhere? It comes with practice. So is it easy? No. Does it come with one piece of writing or one day or during one exam? No. But what I'm encouraging you to do is that by understanding the why of referencing, you make it your culture. And so we can see four other reasons by the right: providing content and background information. Whatever it is you want to discuss, it's important that you set the tone, you establish the setting, you give us some context. And to do that, you have to refer to others. I'll give you a classic example. I'm here and I'm presenting a paper that touches on decoloniality. But in discussing decoloniality, it comes from other contexts. You can't discuss decoloniality without talking about colonization or colonialism or coloniality. Even though my work is about decoloniality, I'm targeting a particular context, the music world in Nigeria or even in River State. But before I get to that point, it means that I have to create a thorough, sort of a story detailing my journey to my point, to the gap I'm trying to fill. And so in doing that, I have to refer to others. In my work, for instance, I'm referring to Fanon, I'm referring to Ngugi Batyungu, I'm referring to Peter Eke. All these people I have listed in my work towards building my own argument. If I fail to do that, my work stands alone. And you can't build nothing. You can't build something on nothing. And so it takes me back to what Newton said. We build on the shoulders of giants. Whether it's the theory, the historical context, or the empirical findings or the empirical basis of your work, it's important that you cite and refer people to lend to credibility and high acceptance of your work. The next reason is facilitating reproducibility and verification. Sometimes we carry out studies and then people subject our findings to further tests. And so they want to see whether or not they'll find the same thing if they were to carry out the study in other contexts, in other parts of the world. You can imagine if you write a paper and you publish it, it's about Nigeria, and somebody wants to go test it out in, say, New Zealand or in South Africa or any other part of the world, and then they look at the work. You haven't provided enough sources to back up the claims that you've made. It makes it therefore difficult to push the boundaries of knowledge, to add to the literature, to enhance meaning, to enrich knowledge. It makes it impossible. Therefore, it's important that we reference. The next two reasons border around promoting intellectual dialogue and collaboration, and then lastly, contributing to knowledge creation and innovation. I know that we've discussed all of this in the past, but I remind you now for two reasons. You're preparing for your exam and you're not quite sure. I'm going to stay in the direction of the kind of questions you're responding to, but I think beyond and above the exam, what I want for you, my prayer for you, my desire for you is that you make this a part of your life, a part of your makeup as an academic. Whenever it is, you borrow somebody's idea, you're going to incorporate, you're going to provide full information as we've discussed. Cite them properly using whatever guide it is. And for us in River State University, and particular reference to FCMS, Faculty of Communication and Media Studies, our standard is what? APE 6th edition. I want to also use this moment to pause and apologize that the material that I was preparing for some reason wasn't available, wasn't ready at the time they expected. So you know how printers can be. They kept on producing very low quality work, and I didn't want that. If I'm going to stamp my name on any product, it has to be the best quality ever. So I apologize. And I hope that by now the monies have been returned, first of all. And then secondly, I've also talked to cost reps that I will cover for whatever charges that they may incur. I'm yet to hear from them regarding that. Abasiama, please don't forget, talk to the MSc cost rep as well to send me that information so I can make it up. Okay, back to what we're discussing. Referencing citation is important. The in-text citation is important, just as the reference list is important. If you include any material in text, you have to provide the full information in the reference list. And we've discussed this extensively. Okay, I'm going to pause now and sort of flag some questions just to get you to think about what we have said so far, because I really need this class to be really brief and to the point. I'm going to raise the questions and I'm going to allow for people to sort of contribute or leave comments on what they think is the best approach to responding to these questions. I'm not saying these are the questions that will show up during the exam, but I will encourage everybody in the class to take the questions seriously, if you get what I mean. Okay, and I'll take this down now and flag some of these questions. Okay, can we carefully look through this question and see whether we can attempt or think around what the possible approach to this question would be? I'll read it out just in case. Reflect on the ethical considerations involved in scholarly writing. How do citation and referencing practices help uphold ethical standards in research and writing? Provide specific examples where proper citations have played a crucial role in maintaining ethical integrity. I'll need people to just leave some comments suggesting ways that we can approach this, or even if whether or not they understand what is being said here, and then we can discuss it. Reflect on the ethical considerations involved in scholarly writing. How do citation and referencing practices help uphold ethical standards in research and writing? Provide specific examples where proper citations have played a crucial role in maintaining ethical integrity. I will encourage everyone to please take this question down, and even as we discuss them here, also go ahead and think about them on your own. The whole issue of referencing, especially in academic settings, is an ethical question. Why is it an ethical question? Why is it important? Why do schools hold people? Like I said, we build on the shoulders of giants. The whole thing about the academic sector is building merits-based system. And so the idea of lying or pretending to take on people's ideas is not something that academic institutions would allow. And so they have all this, before you submit your papers, they will subject your paper to, say, Turnitin or any of the other software, so that they can verify whether or not what you've written is entirely yours, one. And then secondly, whether you have done proper referencing and citation. In other words, in spaces where you've borrowed people's work, have you admitted as such, or you're pretending everything is yours? I read a lot of papers by students, and then they write on and on and on. I mean, they write, you see, you may read through 1 or 2 pages and you haven't seen one citation. And that's really odd. And then there's the other one where students will just take a citation and they'll just plaster it. They'll say something and then at the end they'll just, cite something. And that's not how citation really works. Just plastering it there doesn't make sense. You have to explain, because you have to show that you have actually opened that text to show us what role it is playing in your work. We can talk about that, later, but I want you to think about this question. What does it mean to you? If you were to encounter it in an exam, how would you approach it? How would you tackle it? Do you even believe that the whole thing about citation and referencing is subject to ethics? It's something that we think about ethically. What does it have to do in terms of integrity? And as you do that, I want you to also remember the things that we said, why referencing matters, and see where and how it fits into any of these building blocks. Yeah. Okay, I'll pull up another question, and I also encourage everyone to please write it down. If you don't write it down now, of course, it's live here and it's going to be on the website. You can come back to look at it as many times as you want. Okay, the next question here is, analyze the potential consequences of failing to cite sources properly in academic work. How can this impact the author's reputation, the academic community, and the dissemination of knowledge? Analyze the potential consequences of failing to cite sources properly in academic work. How can this impact the author's reputation, the academic community, and the dissemination of knowledge? I want you to also think about this question. Think about it robustly. What does this mean when we think about reference and citation documentation? How does this apply? What are the consequences of failing to cite a piece of writing properly? We have said here that there's a thing called plagiarism. And plagiarism can happen at different levels, right? So you can imagine a university where maybe during their ranking, they find out that, most persons there take on people's ideas and they don't admit such, they don't cite properly. What would that do for that university? How would their ranking be? What would that really mean? How would that affect them? And how would that shape knowledge in that particular space? We have a problem in many universities in Nigeria where a lot of students don't want to work. They don't want to, they just want the certificates for free. And so when they're given tasks, in fact, I had a conversation with someone not too long ago, and the person was making a case. And the kind of names and people he mentioned, I was shocked. How in this particular faculty, not our faculty, this particular faculty, that the lecturers there sometimes encourage the students who are doing their programs to go to people to help them write their projects. And I was like, what? How? That's horrible. That's horrible. Nobody should be doing that. Not in this century. I know of some instances where students travel far, wide to different places, and then they'll borrow projects and they'll just come stamp their name on it. I've been attended an interview before where someone, I think I mentioned this in your class, where someone, was just stepping in, and I saw that she was holding a document that contained somebody else's name. It wasn't even her name. She wasn't even careful to look through. It's wild. Those are the kind of things. I mean, think about Nigeria. Think about where we are. Think about our struggles. If you think about it critically, you see a lot of the things that we're going through is because we have the wrong people in place. And how did those people get there? Somebody opened the door. Somebody lowered the standards for them to get there. And no country can do well. No university, nobody can do well by breaking the rules. Okay, so of course, citing and referencing may be something that you've been asked to do, but of course, there are major consequences, negative consequences when it's done, if when it's not done properly or not done at all. Okay, the next question. Explain how proper citation and referencing practices can contribute to the academic conversation and knowledge building process. Provide examples of how these practices can enhance the credibility and reliability of scholarly work. This is another question that one can think about in terms of a course like this one. How proper referencing and citation practices can contribute to academic conversation. Remember, we talked about collaboration. We label a lot of things, I mean, in terms of the reasons for referencing. And so if you go back and you think about them and you look through them, you see that for all the questions that I'm flagging, those are sort of the pathways, the entryways towards responding to these questions. So please think about this robustly. And I got help. I just typed this up using the software to just say, what are the possible questions? And all of this popped up. So please note them, think about them. They may or may not be part of the questions that you respond to. But I want to encourage you to please practice, 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 practice. Okay, if you're done writing, I would like to go to the last question now. Reflect on the ethical considerations involved in scholarly writing. How do citation and referencing practices help uphold ethical standards in research and writing? Provide specific examples where proper citation have played a crucial role in maintaining ethical integrity. This is similar to the first one, or is it the same? Just 1 minute, let me see. Okay, it's exactly the same. Okay. All right. This is the same as the first one. So please think about these questions. Think about ways that you may want to approach them, even as you prepare for your exam. And this is the one thing I want to remind you that once you're able to understand what has been laid out here, this is your gateway to responding to all the questions that are flagged. Where you're talking about ethics, plagiarism is an ethical offense, right? Whether it is you're talking about what can happen in the event where people do not reference properly, you can find the answers when you open these portals. Whether it's providing context and background, all of those lend to credibility, reproducibility, verification. All of those show up your argument and therefore lend to the expansion, explosion, and increase and enhancement of knowledge in the world. And no one can really in the world of in this world, in terms of what we practice and what we're trying to achieve here, can do well without learning how to cite and reference properly and actually putting them to practice and being able to defend the reasons why. Yeah. All right. Thank you. I'm beginning to wind down now because, like I said, I would like to prepare for church, but I'm willing to take 1 or 2 questions if you have them, or else I'll leave you to go think about these questions. And even if you don't feel like asking the questions now, you can ask the question in the WhatsApp group. I'll try to reach out to you. But I think it's fairly simple. I also want to encourage students when it's time for exam. People tend to panic unnecessarily. My aim as a lecturer, I don't, my students don't fail. And that's because I believe that I do the best I can with every course. I teach within the limits of what I can, given time, space, resources, what you're supposed to know. I provide you the resources, I do the extras, including I mean, teaching from New Zealand, if possible. And in this case, it is possible we're doing this. And I thank you for being here. So writing my exam is not something I say, oh, be scared about or be panicky about. No, no, no. Exam is just to determine whether or not you remember enough. Referencing a citation is a practice. It's something that you must do, whether you like it or not. So my job in this exam is not to measure for you. Did you put the comma in the right place or the full stop in the right place? That's one way of doing it. The approach going into this exam for me is to enshrine it, to have it in your system. I want to be sure that you've gotten the reason why. Because, like I said in the beginning, if you do know why, it's going to be difficult for you to implement it. Okay. So, yes, anybody with a question, or else we'll begin to wind down. Okay. Abasiama, can you please let me know whether the master's people were aware? Are there master students here? Or it's just the PGD class? I'd like to know, please. Can you leave me a comment so that I know? Who do we have here? Only PGD or masters and masters and PGD? I'm waiting for that response, please. Okay, great. So there are MSc students here. It's just about 31 persons here. Where did everybody other person go? Okay, great. All right. Yeah. Okay, great. So there are MSc. Okay. So says MSc here. This is to thank you for finding time to keep your promise of another class referring to this. Great. Okay. So thank you, Uchenna Daily. A kind words. Thank you. God bless you. This is quite helpful. Okay, great. All right. So we have both MSc and PGD students here. I believe that my task here is done, therefore. And so I trust the Lord to be with you during your exam, to cause you to excel, to give you the peace of mind that you need to go through your exam and excel in the process. Thank you so much for making this sacrifice. It's a sacrifice on my part, but I also acknowledge as a sacrifice on your part to do the data and then come up here to just listen to me talk. Thank you. God bless you. See you in Ninja. Have an amazing day. Bye.